actions in the previous life will determine what we're born with. Like, you might be born rich if you did good. My gut instinct is just like doesn't sit well with me, because I think about all the times we've justified oppressing certain people because we say that, God has chosen, like white people, like in colonizing people, saying it's God's will. Can you help me understand, like, reconcile that? Because I feel like God wouldn't want to use that justification that, like, if you're poor, it's because you deserve it. If you're, oppressed in some ways because of something you did.
But whatever situation you're in doesn't mean it cannot change. So you may be born poor, but we have in America so many histories of people who had nothing and became rich and famous. Because you can, by your mind, have a will, you have a will, to do things which go against the karma, or take you out of your karmic situation. And you may get a blessing. You may meet a person that gives you some insight or some benediction. Like in the Mahabharata, Dronacharya was the guru of all the soldiers on both sides of this family. But when he was a child, when he asked his father for some milk, they didn't have any milk. So the father mixed some flour and water and said, "Here, have some milk." So he accepted it, but he was so impoverished he couldn't even get a glass of milk. Yet, he trained himself to become such an archer that the whole kingdom of India went to him to learn archery. And he was the instructor of Arjuna, who became, Bhagavad Gita was spoken to Arjuna, and Arjuna was the best archer in the whole world. So your situation, whatever your fruit of your karma, doesn't mean that's it for life. By your will, by your association, you can change. So even though, like if you look at your hand, everything is on these lines, what's the future? But your future can completely change if you invest in your spiritual discipline. Even by clapping your hands when we're doing kirtan, your future is changing. The lines will change. So, just like when you're playing cards, you get a deck. So how you play the cards is up to you. How you deal with what you have. So everything is between you and God, You may be born in a very rich family, and we see many rich people, they become degraded. They become drunks, they waste their whole life, they don't do anything. And somebody may be born very poor, they take advantage of certain situations, become the founder of Walmart or something, from rags to riches. So everything is can be changed, adjusted. So this is why we're saying real poverty means ignorance, not knowing who you are, who is God, what is your purpose. So we're impoverished as long as we don't have the real knowledge of who we are and what we're meant to do. So we should enrich ourselves with spiritual knowledge. We should make our health spiritually strong. Even if we're crippled, even if we're blind, if you understand and hear from proper persons, you can have spiritual vision. One time, one blind person in India, he was very advanced. So the pujari in the temple, just as a joke, he didn't put any clothes on the murtis, the deities in the temple. So he asked the Babaji, "Hey, what color dress do you think I put on the murtis today?" The blind man couldn't see, but he had spiritual vision. He said, "Hey, Baba, don't joke. There's no clothes on the deity." So, we should not be, God is perfect. So whatever our condition, that is God's arrangement. Whatever suffering we had to undergo, that was all meant for us to understand a certain thing about our character. And once we understand our character and why things happen, why bad things happen to good people, because of the karma. You know that Hare Krishna, he wrote the book, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. And he had a crazy understanding because he didn't understand the law of karma. So you should understand perfectly, what is this law of karma? How does it work? And it's very difficult to understand. It's very hard. Certain things are very, very difficult to understand. But if you try to understand, you understand why I'm where I am, what I'm doing, my situation. But then also understand, I have mercy available to me. I can change anything. But what change do we want? Do we want a material blessing? This is called karma yoga. Karma yoga means I want to be happy, money, rich, good wife. So people do yoga for the karmic result. This is initial karma. Then there's jnana yoga. A jnana yogi, he realizes, no, anything material is just going to make me attached to this world. And if I'm attached to this world, I'm going to come back here again. I should be detached. So I'll meditate on myself or the absolute. He speculates. He doesn't know God, but he knows, I don't want to be part of this materialistic, suffering world. That's called jnana yoga. But bhakti yoga is called the descending process. You don't try to ascend by your willpower and by your abilities to the supreme spiritual level. You're calling out to the Supreme to come down. Give me your mercy. This is what happens when you chant the name of God. You're crying for the mercy. And because God is in your heart as a super soul, which we call Paramatma in Sanskrit, full knowledge, full bliss, everything can be blossomed into your heart by crying out and serving the Lord, particularly by this chant. So you have an infinite potential, and that potential should be maximized by developing the fullest of love. So divine love is what is Bhakti. Bhakti means love, the Supreme Person. So that capability is there with you. But right now, we're diverting our attention, our love to many material situations. But divine love is there. All it has to be is awakened. And if you have it, that love will be overwhelming. And therefore, there is descriptions of what's called bliss, ecstasy, spiritual ecstasy. Sometimes the eyes will not stop rolling tears. Like Lord Chaitanya, when he was on earth, his tears were flooding like syringes. So many volumes of tears were coming from his eyes when he was chanting. The hairs will stand on end, the voice will falter. There are what's called 8 symptoms of ecstasy. And this is what happens when you develop love of God.